This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 856, recorded on Wednesday, December 29th, 2021. The top 11 science stories of 2021. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kiki, and tonight we will fill your heads with the top science from the past year. But first, thanks to our amazing Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. You can become a part of the Patreon community at patreon.com/thisweekinscience.
Disclaimer. As we end the year, the end of another fantastic and wonderful year, full of fantastic science, and beyond that, it was somewhat terrible. In 2021, as we ended the year, the planet lost an additional 3.6 million lives to the 1.8 million we had lost the year before. We have continued to fail to take a virus seriously. And we are, as we were this time last year, at the peak of transmission and death, just as a new variant offers a more contagious acceleration of infection. 2021, so contagious was the year that even as it leaves, it is passing along the virus to the following year. 2021, the year that showed again how well ignored and maybe it will go away strategies fare when dealing with actual threats. 2021, the year we didn't learn from history and repeated it immediately. While there is some desire, even now, to not look back, we pause for a moment to look back and see what we've learned. This Week in Science, Top 11 Year in Review, coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. We wish you Merry holidays, Merry Twistmas, Merry all the things, and now we're here. We have made it all the way to the end of the year. We started in January and we thought, look at all this time ahead of us. And yeah, Justin, we decided to immediately forget things that we had learned.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's over. It's just,
That's all over now. Oh, 2021, you left us feeling like it was still 2020. And I don't know what happened. A lot of stuff happened. We've lost many people, unfortunately. And we look forward, though, to the next year. And as we start looking forward, we do look back to see where we've been. Because sometimes, even though we may have only been in our basements for the past year, not experiencing as many things as we would prefer, sometimes you got to keep track of the advancements that are going on around you to know that progress is being made. So, I would love to ask you normally at this point, what you got? What are we going to talk about? But really, it's just the countdown. That's what we have, right, Blair?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about numbers 11 through 1.
Wait a minute. Why?
Top 11.
What? People who normally come to a countdown show,
yes,
they say the top 10, right? It's always a nice round number. Why the heck are we doing top 11?
Because there's always something that gets left behind. Of course, then there's that thing that would have been 12 that you're leaving, and then there'd be 14, and then so we have to cut it. We have to cut it somewhere. So we cut it at 11. That is it. It's the 10 plus one more. It's that fabulous. It's one more science, isn't it?
It's one more science. It's great. As we jump into our show here, I do want to remind you at this year's end that it would be a great gift to us if you did subscribe to the TWIS podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platforms, or you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch for live streaming and for video on demand. And additionally, we are on Twitter and Instagram. But you can always find us at TWIS.org. All right, now it's time for the science countdown. Let's do the drum roll for
Number 11.
11.
11.
Number 11 is one of those things that never would have made the list before we got our newest member, Blair, on board. What was it, a decade ago? We're talking decade in review of Blair being part of the show. Animal intelligence.
What? Animals are intelligent? You didn't say.
Yeah, it turns out, and so these are not stories I'm as most familiar with, but I got some stories here. It says, "Let me hear your monkey talk." Are monkeys talking?
This was a story you brought, Justin.
Yeah.
I brought this.
Yeah, this is all about how marmosets eavesdrop on one another.
Oh, you got to know what the other monkeys are talking about, I
Yeah.
guess.
Oh, yeah,
Pay
absolutely.
attention to those other monkeys.
But I remember
Yeah.
that study was really cool because of the researchers' use of like facial recognition infrared scanning. They did scanning of faces
Uh-huh.
to see how different monkeys were responding facially to different monkey calls.
Through thermal imaging of their faces. Yeah, so they
I
could
do recall this.
heat changes in their face to indicate kind of emotional responses. Very cool.
Yeah, it was a very cool
super
study
cool.
too because they didn't have to wire into monkey brain or
Mhm.
anything to do it. They could just the monkeys were largely unharmed from.
Don't
just
you
having
hate
their
it
faces
when you
looked at.
spend hours slaving over a hot monkey brain? You could just use some facial recognition.
Good job, monkeys, for eavesdropping. Is there anybody else who's intelligent out there?
And then I don't know what this headline means. It says, "Can a cuttlefish say chubby bunny with a mouthful of marshmallows?"
This is mine. This is cuttlefish can pass the marshmallow test. So, do you remember the marshmallow test?
Yeah,
The
but
delayed gratification test?
But that's also, by the way, that's a contentious study in that it's delayed gratification and not proper survival strategy for lower income children. That test is also like one of the most misunderstood studies of the past, but still.
But it does get at if it is delayed gratification and also survival skills. Cuttlefish are in there, and they're thinking about survival.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, so those that wait the longest also do better in learning tests. And so this is the first time that they found a link between self-control and intelligence in an animal other than humans and chimps. So
Especially one with like tentacles.
yes, without, a normal brain.
Cockatoos know how to use tools. Now, I don't never cockatoo. Is it cockatoo? Now you're gonna have to help me with this. Cockatoo is not one of those shape identifying talking birds, is it?
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
cockatoo. Okay, so this is already
It's a really
smart
bird.
So
for
we know
sure.
they use tools. This study was new because they were able to use 3 different tools in sequence deliberately to achieve a specific goal.
Okay,
So the idea is
learned how to
that's
work
like
a protocol.
broadcast planning, right? So they could plan an attack for a problem, plan out how they could use these tools in sequence, and then do it.
Order of operation. That
Mhm.
is key to being able to do any successful experiment.
Different kinds of tools to access the fruit.
Impressive.
Dun, dun, dun.
And the final one that we're recapping here for animal intelligence is an orangutan?
Orangutan.
Orangutan
Yes.
drawing.
Yeah, so this one was later in the year. It was actually a pretty recent one where they were able to look at different orangutan drawings from different individuals, identify which individual did them, so there was specific style, and then they could also identify different stylistic changes in an individual over time. And they also saw that some of them had a preference over drawing to others. So there's this idea that it is a recreational activity, that there is personal preference among orangutans for drawing, and that they have their own personal style that can be reflected by emotion potentially. It's very preliminary.
Potentially, yeah.
Well, because if I'm recalling right, and maybe I'm not, there was one orangutan that was specifically, they were like, oh, we could actually, if we threw out the rest of the study, just that one was very impressive compared to the rest.
So that one was impressive compared to the rest, but it showed a differentiation. This orangutan liked to draw more than the other orangutans. So there
Which
there
we
were
know
certain
some
things.
people like to draw more than other people.
Mhm.
And there's others, some with an artistic eye and others who don't. Individual differences do matter. And if you're having a small sample set, you're going to end up with those differences in your animals.
That's what makes me question my intelligence, because I'm still saying orangutan. I don't know why. I never learned the proper way to pronounce that word.
Well, we had to learn also how to say Neanderthal.
Yes.
The German Neanderthal as opposed to Neanderthal, which is the
Yes.
Americanization. Yeah.
Yes, tell your friends there's no G on the end of the word orangutan.
Orangutan.
Yeah.
Make
All
sure
right. Well,
everybody knows.
everybody knows. That was animal intelligence. There's lots of other studies, but that was a good drawing of the studies from that category. Blair, you want to give us number 10?
10 is all about cloning.
Cloning.
So cloning is a story that has kind of come in and out, I think, of the scientific limelight over the past probably 30 years now. When was Dolly? That was like 98, probably. I want to look it up now.
It was before Gen Z was born.
Yes,
No.
it was definitely before Gen Z was born. But Dolly was a while ago. Anyway, point being, there's been lots of kind of excitement about cloning, and then it's like, oh, it's probably never going to happen. Oh, wait, oh, no, it's probably never going to happen. Well, there were a couple really cool things that happened this year related to cloning. So one is that they were able to clone black-footed ferrets enough that they think they might actually be able to reestablish their efficacy in their environment. So this is an animal that is critically endangered, that there was like, I didn't catch the exact number when I was looking back at these again, but there was a very small number of these guys left. And there's 650 today, but there was this teeny tiny population, less than 100, that they found in 1981 after they thought they were extinct. And so this larger population is due to, in part, this idea of cloning. And so they were able to copy some black-footed ferrets, and 96 was Dolly. There we go. And so this was through a surrogate mother, and this will allow them to diversify the population, because this was from some genetic material from ferrets that are gone. So the idea is it'll kind of reduce a bottleneck. So this is a combination of actually a few cloning techniques that we've had our eyes on: saving endangered species that have reduced genetic population, and then also taking frozen or preserved genetic material and inseminating a current animal in order to bring that fetus to viability. So all very cool stuff. And then
so that means we can do it for everything.
Yes.
Let's save everything.
Yeah.
Was it 2020 that they were doing rhino cloning?
Yes.
Or was that? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that's the highest and best use. I think they need to focus on rhino cloning for a long time, because rhinos, as I learned this year, are the sweetest, cutest, cuddliest, giant puppies. I think is how you describe them, Blair.
Yes.
5,000-pound puppies.
They're so playful.
Now we can have cloned horned puppies.
Are you sure, Justin, you wouldn't rather clone a mammoth?
Can we do that? Are you on board? Oh,
no, absolutely not.
She's not on board, but
I'm a professional. I'm a professional, so I will report the story that Kiki put in the run sheet for me. And that includes this company that was backed to launch a $15 million mammoth cloning endeavor. So $15 million this year to help get that going from George Church. Anyway, we talked about how in reality, this is kind of the poster child for this research, and this research will actually probably get used for current species that are endangered and will help in other ways, fingers crossed. But who knows? We might see some mammoths too, to my chagrin.
Yeah, and would that really be a bad thing?
Yes, but ultimately, I will tell you, so it's on the record, if there is ever a cloned mammoth and I can visit it, you better believe I will.
Okay. See, now we're winning over hearts and minds. Slowly.
Do I agree with it? No. Will I pet a mammoth? You bet your bippy.
And yeah, it's not going to be a mammoth, right? It's going to be a hybrid.
Of course.
With an elephant, most likely.
Right.
It's going to be a mix.
Yeah.
It's not going to be full mammoth.
Yes, but the thing is, we can't keep elephants alive right now either. So
it's a
strange choice to use elephants to clone mammoths when the elephants are actually critically endangered. But it's fine. Whatever. Cloning. There were things this year. Moving on.
Cloning. Oh no, number 10. It's still controversial. Okay. Let's move on to number 9.
Number nine.
Ooh, we first heard about these guys in 2020, and there were actually a couple of stories in 2021 about the xenobots. These were the self-organizing, self-reproducing biobots made from embryonic frog stem cells, in which this most recently, in the beginning of December, the researchers published work in which they suggested a whole new form of reproduction, in which they reproduced kinematically, and these little frog cells would bump into each other and go, "You're mine," and then bump into another one, go, "You're mine too," and eventually they would all glom together and turn into little Pac-Man shapes.
Yeah, so talk about stories that we had problems with. I had a big problem with this story and calling it reproduction. It's not reproduction, but that's fine.
It's not reproduction.
Neat. It was very neat. Not reproduction in any way. Yeah. Not recombination of DNA. Not splitting of nucleus. None of it. It's not reproduction. Sorry.
You also had a problem, I remember, with the definition of these being called a biological robot.
Yes. That's ridiculous.
You're like, no, these are not robots.
It's a blob of cells.
Yeah, I mean, it's a blob of cells that happen to do a particular thing through the emergent properties of complexity, right? It's kind of they have certain traits, and all those traits when they come together into a swarm can have a certain output. And so if you know what that output is and what you want, you can, choose certain traits in such a way that it's quote unquote programmable. Yeah. You have input and that leads to output.
Is a Slinky a robot?
No. Yes.
So then this isn't either, is my point. It is programmed, quote unquote, to move a specific way when pushed in a specific way down a set of stairs. It's not a robot. It's not a robot.
And maybe if you have enough Slinkies together on the stairs, they can sweep my stairs of all the cat hair, right? Yeah. And that would that be robotic action?
No.
Okay, so now what you're starting to talk about is determinism versus free will, and as a proponent for artificial intelligence and android equality, I got to tell you, there's not a whole lot of difference between programming and what you would call your instinct or your what a baby's born with and knows how to do already without somebody telling it to do. Is not that far off from what a robot can do with basic programming. So,
what I'm saying is this is like physics, basically, and that's all.
It brings biology and physics together.
Okay, let me just explain something real quick.
And they're cute.
Biology has always relied on physics.
Yeah, for sure. That's fine.
Okay,
that's fine. I'm just saying that, like,
never been without physics.
It's a ball rolling down a hill is not a robot. This is my point. is just external physical momentum
That's
does
all we
not
are,
make
Claire.
a robot.
Right,
You're
so
just
so for
describing
2022,
humanity.
we will have to bring in the researchers on this and get
Yes.
them to explain to us how these are robots
Yes, please.
so that we can understand. Let's move on from the Xenobots to who's up next?
Oh, it's me, number 8.
Number
Eight.
number eight, number eight.
Regeneration. It was a big year for regeneration. I didn't really realize that. I picked a couple stories about this, and then once we looked at all of the stories we picked, wow, it was a big year for it. So, tunicates called Ascidians, they were able to be chopped into 3 pieces and
Yeah.
Three different things.
regrew into 3 organisms. Yeah.
That's crazy.
They're like, I don't need to just be chopped in 3. I can be 3 of me.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, so they perform a very simple regeneration in order to reproduce. They have a colonial lifestyle, but in this case, they were able to chop them into 3 and they were able to regenerate organs and everything they needed to survive. So,
And it's amazing because it's like what this is not the tunicates. This is chordata. This is organs with a dorsal cord. So you would think if you've got a dorsal cord, which is organization beyond just like a mushy amoeba-like body plan, how could you be chopped into 3 and then regrow that easily?
And specifically how it relates to us and our desire to regrow limbs is that that means that their missing body systems, the blueprints, are maintained. So that I think is the thing that's crazy, is that normally we can't regrow things because our body doesn't know how to do that. It doesn't know unless we can, take stem cells and manipulate them in a special way to then do a specific thing. And we're still trying to figure out how that works. But that's kind of the gap, is that they don't know how to do it. Which brings me to the other one. The next study is about axolotls. Salamanders, and specifically axolotls, are famous for regrowing things. And so what they found was that based on how axolotls regrow limbs, it looks like the key to us doing that is maintained through the evolutionary lineage. So looking through that, they say that humans have an untapped potential for regeneration. So we have scar formation, but axolotls don't scar.
Right.
Right, and that's the thing that's partly in the way of regeneration.
Right,
is the ability to
once there's a scar, right? It's done. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so, of course, axolotls are almost extinct in the wild. So, that's a problem if we're trying to use them to figure this out.
Well, we can help the axolotls by growing an amazing laboratory collection.
Yeah, but so they saw similarities between what axolotls do to regenerate and what mammalian embryos can do in the womb. It's the same processes. And the axolotl is known for its very particular look, which is based on the fact that they look young forever. So these gills that are so kind of charismatic on their face that look like fuzzy antlers, I guess.
They don't get wrinkles.
Yeah, so they, and they don't get wrinkles. Salamanders have those gills when they're babies, but axolotls keep them. And so one of the ideas is that the axolotls have maintained a lot of youthful aspects, including their ability for regeneration. And so they think that it's likely that adult mammals have the genetic code for regeneration. It just needs to be unlocked somehow. So this is an exciting discovery related to that.
Yeah.
We also this year saw a blind patient recover partial vision with optogenetics. So that was a big deal. Allowing the blind to see again is pretty...
Yeah, let's just stick some
sci-fi.
molecules for light reception into your eye and bada bing, then they're working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is a big deal. And then the last one is that sea slugs who severed their own heads could regenerate brand new bodies from that head. So if their body was sick in some way, they would just chop themselves at the neck and regrow a new body.
I don't need that old body. I
Uh-huh.
want a new one. I don't like this one. I want another one. Yes, please.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing ability. Like the idea that they, from the head down, get rid of all of it. You don't need your heart.
Start
you don't
over.
need you can start over.
Yeah. It's
I mean,
well,
slugs aren't people though. So
No. Also,
that's
they
been
eat
documented.
photosynthetic algae, and so that algae can photosynthesize for them when they no longer have a stomach. So that also helps kind of bridge the
They have
we
a
can't
life
do
support system.
that. Yeah. Oh God, look at that head. Look at that head just go.
the little head's like, what happened to my body?
Well,
What's going on there?
We thought that
Oh.
it would die soon without a heart and other important organs, but we were
Yeah.
surprised again to find that it regenerated the whole body.
Yeah, that's
Oop.
pretty impressive.
That's not me anymore. Gotta let that dead weight go. Yeah, epigenetics is probably a huge part of that. The little packets of cellular material, exomes that get passed around. There's been a lot of talk about exomes over the last couple of years. But now, Justin, where are we now?
We are now at number 7.
Seven.
Seven.
Synthetic biology.
Ooh.
Hey, you know why babies are born?
Why or
Hey.
how?
Why? Because they run out of womb.
Oh, right.
Oh, there we go.
Researchers grew mice embryos without wombs. They grew them in a jar. Well, it's probably not just like a typical jar. It's probably a pretty fancy jar. Yeah, looks like they were having mice grown outside of another animal.
Yeah, so this is like a tiny lamb bag, right?
Right, yeah. To be able to have from the very beginning, then the lamb bags were like an IVF later. It was like, we'll take the 20-week fetus and put it in the lamb bag after the point when really it's almost at the point where it could be alive on its own, but we'll give it all that support. We'll do this fake womb later. And the idea of the lamb bag is that it would be a potential for preemies to be able to help babies who are born significantly premature. But with this, the idea is really the beginning, right? You have the cells, put them together, stick them in a jar. Organism.
Yeah. And this has fantastic potential for anybody who wants to have offspring, but doesn't have womb for it in their lives.
No womb.
No womb for being pregnant.
Yeah. It's also really good news for cloning, actually.
Yeah. This is how we're going to see all those cloned ferrets, right?
Yeah. You don't need a surrogate then.
Or we get really big bags and then we can fit the mastodons in.
Right. Sure.
Yeah, right now they're talking about this as, just for research to be able to observe crucial phases of mammalian development in smaller organisms like mice. But if they get good at it, this is really a potential, like you said, to be able to move past the need for surrogates. And that could be huge, but we're not there yet, everybody. But just a note, scientists are getting a lot better at putting cells in jars.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
I don't know what this one is. This is Irish crying eyes. What is this story about? Does anybody know what this one is?
Right. So the researchers, this is what I brought to the show. Researchers they put tear glands in, or they put a bunch of cells, basically an organoid for tear glands, and they grew them in dishes. But then they didn't just go so far as to successfully make a tear gland. They made them cry. So they were tear glands that could produce tears.
Sure. That's creepy as heck.
It is a little bit creepy, but at the same time, it's also very interesting because it can help us get at the root cause of things like dry eyes and can help us figure out more about how the tear glands work and where they go wrong when they do.
Well, and our ability to grow any functioning part of a body and have it function independently from the body is great science for the future, I think.
Yeah.
It'll help with healthcare in the future, for sure.
It will. Yeah, it absolutely will. So maybe they'll figure out how to induce tears in people more readily.
Yeah.
Or,
for
you know,
movies, right? Is that no?
yeah. Just sad movies. The sad not rom-coms. I don't know, things like The English Patient.
It's going to be used to make robots cry.
Yeah, basically.
No, thank you.
Like what is it? You know, robot that cried. To terrible result. Tin Man.
Oh,
He'd get
he
really
rested.
sad about something, he'd start crying, he'd rust up.
Yep.
That's how it would happen. Such a sentimental.
Tin Man rested.
Yes.
Synthetic life made some news. Scientists crafted a single-celled synthetic organism that was able to divide and multiply.
Yeah, and it was like the smallest, I guess, number of genes that they needed to date to be able to produce this.
492.
Yeah.
All they
See,
needed.
this is reproduction, if I may.
Is it?
Yeah.
I think it is.
But if you don't, and at some point have it, well, maybe not. I don't know. I feel like at some point you need to. Maybe you don't. Maybe you don't. Researchers in China kind of succeeded in making a monkey human chimeric embryo.
Right. They actually went about creating lab-grown monkey human chimera mixes, and some people say it was a success, but others aren't really as like gung-ho about the results because the embryos did not have a lot of human cells in them. So that the mix of monkey to human, it didn't work out the way that you would hope.
Well, they're
Yeah,
not
so
allowed to
it's
have them
right.
alive for very long anyway, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's in China though, so who's allowing what there is also kind of a gray area. But so this is the story that like some U.S. researchers got maybe some hot water because they may have contributed in some way.
Yeah. Yes.
They weren't maybe supposed to.
Yeah, there's so he wasn't so the researcher Juan Carlos Espazua Belmonte, he's at the Salk Institute here in the United States, and he worked with Chinese colleagues to do this research, and he's been working on chimeric research for a while, injecting human stem cells into pig embryos, and with the pigs they were able to get 1 in 100,000 of the cells that were human. But in this study with the monkeys, these cynomolgus monkeys, they inserted 25 human embryonic pluripotent stem cells into 132 monkey embryos and then reared the chimeras in dishes for 20 days. They didn't let them go into organismal size. It was still just very cellular. And they say that after 13 days, they were able to count human cells in about 1/3 of the chimeras, and they had seemed to integrate and begun to specialize into cell types for various organs. So there are differences in what was turned on and what wasn't turned on. They weren't necessarily meshing really well, though.
Right. So they sounded kind of non-viable in the end.
Yeah.
And if you're at all horrified by the idea of a human monkey hybrid, really that's just trying a somewhat similar, evolutionary compatriot to humans. In order to do this, what you really want is a human slime mold axolotl.
There we go. Yeah,
because that's how you get to the regeneration. Is you need some of that. And
you also have some of that slime mold intelligence too.
Yeah. Well, and throw turtle in there because they live a really long time.
But then how do you breathe again? And then I don't know what is so then we have a human brain. There's a big brain thing in the synthetic bio. How did big brains get into synthetic biology?
Yeah, that was brain organoids that researchers were looking at different neurons and organoids between different organisms. So humans versus apes versus chimpanzees, gorilla, and looking at these stem cells. So they looking at from the stem cell point of view, how the organoids developed, they determined that there were some very specific parts of brain development in which the neurons were developed that led to the larger sizes and the bigger brains that humans have. And there was a difference, I think, in cellular multiplication rates. We changed the way that we build our brains, and we changed the
Started
actual cell
folding it.
shape. Yeah, the cells of humans have much more of like a conical shape at a different time than other apes. So there's this like transition that human cells have that's different. And that was probably based on a molecular change, or, there's the molecular change, genetic change, all these things kind of happened.
So a
They
lot
had
of
to
this,
happen in
and
a certain
as we're
time.
getting into this, a lot of this Yenru also seems to be talking about tissue intelligence, or sort of like we assume that there's this top-down design that's like, okay, the brain's going to be this big, so go build this much brain. There must be localized tissue that's making sort of decisions or reactions. Same thing with the scarring versus the regeneration. You're talking about tissues in that region that are sort of getting to make calls that tissues elsewhere. There's a lot of tissue activity going on that isn't in the blueprint. That isn't necessarily in the DNA. It's like that latent thing that we've got. Somehow the tissue is being given different instructions. But if we can get the tissues, the local tissues, there's a little bit different game plan. We might be able to regenerate. And then hearing. Oh, we did some synthetic organoids that could lead to new treatments for hearing loss.
Yeah, new cochlear. And also we're looking at eyes. So there was the hearing loss cochlear organoids, and then there's also the brain organoids that grew eyes. Do you remember that one? Like, oh, look, we have brain organoids, and
Yikes.
they have eyes that are, okay,
Yeah.
that's creepy.
Yeah, I think it's the next, I don't know how long, 10 years probably. I feel like we're actually getting very close to potential alleviations for blindness and deafness. For those that are pursuing it, they might get a chance to see and hear, which is wild and awesome.
That is. And then we can go a step further and get bee eyes, or get some of those bird eyes that can see magnetic fields. Like,
how about, can I just get some more cones so I can see colors?
Blair would just like to see more colors. Yeah. I mean, there's,
I just like inject my eyeballs with some cones. That's all I'm saying.
That would be great. Okay, should we move to number 6?
Yeah, number 6.
Number
Wait,
6.
what?
6.
Number 6.
Number 6.
Yeah, number 6. Artificial intelligence protein folding. So there were a couple of stories that came out on this past year, and they were earlier in the year, like mid-year, July-ish. And there's one group, we've actually talked with the people working in the Baker Lab out of the University of Washington at the Institute of Protein Design about their work, not on this stuff, but on other aspects of their protein work. But they had an open access, open source AI for determining protein structure, could take 10 minutes running only on a gaming computer. So just straight out of the box, off the rack, not needing any specialized equipment, gaming computer in 10 minutes to solve the puzzles of protein folding. So, I mean, these results were on par with results from 2020 from AlphaFold, which is Google's DeepMind AI. And then just the next day, basically, Google's AlphaFold announced the release of they dropped it. It was like, we reported on 1 week, and then it was like, the next day, Rosetta 2, it was their open source protein sequencer. And that was announced to just completely released a massive database of proteins that it had already sequenced, and it made its code public, which I was not expecting Google to do, which the fact that the code was public is really the part that's going to open up research into protein structure, which will allow us to start addressing therapeutics, right? We can start really addressing root causes of diseases, because once you know why a protein folds a particular way, if you can, if I change this here, change that there, the structure changes, suddenly you have potential ways to, lock and key things together and create therapeutics for diseases that many people are suffering from.
So yeah, what they did was they got like 98% of the proteins that make up the human body.
Yeah, but I mean, not
here's what they
they did. Like. They've got like all of those, but at the same time, like talking to some of the researchers who are interested in the results of all these protein folding computer games, they're saying, maybe a small percentage, 40 to 50% of the database is actually usable. And the rest, it still has bugs in it. And there's a lot of unknowns, but at least it's in the database. And so if you start somewhere, it can only get better.
It's an incredible number are ones that we were having great difficulty in defining and seeing how they were constructed and how they were folded. And a lot of these are for that disease that maybe you had a third cousin who had this, or maybe it was a different disease. You don't remember because the disease is so rare, it affects so few people that there's not a big research push behind it with dollars. You may not know many people. You might not know the name of the disease because it's such a small percentage of the population. And so things like this go untreated by the medical, scientific population because there's just not enough emphasis on it. Now, if you can start with already seeing the proteins that are being folded in one way versus another in these cases, you can streamline the therapeutic for something that we would not still be talking about a cure on the horizon for 100 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in general, we see a lot of good signs of moving towards kind of bespoke healthcare in a way that I think will completely change the game. We'll know your microbiome. We'll be able to sequence proteins related to illnesses immediately. Like, we'll be able to do all sorts of things to be, scan your brain related to certain things, be able to just to kind of like, okay, I'm not going to diagnose you based on other people. Let's just figure out exactly what's going on in your body right now.
Yeah. I think one of the big points that with this protein folding is that while there are many proteins that do have a very distinct structure that belies their function, and those are probably the ones that are higher in the confidence estimates for DeepMind and the work that AlphaFold has been doing. They say that about the final count's about 98.5% of expected proteins in the genome that they've looked at, they've attempted to predict, but they only have a high confidence of about 40% of those human proteins. There's a lot of proteins that have flexible structure, in which there are enzymes that come into play that change the structure once, twice, 3 times, maybe because of pH or other things. So the structure of these proteins changes, and because it does, and they lack definition, so to speak, that makes the confidence in defining them a bit harder. But
it does, and in a lot of those cases,
all your points are valid.
But in a lot of those cases too, they have in some of their what you might call misses or the low certainty, they actually might have 2 or 3 versions of that protein that they've predicted. Yeah. Which then you can at least take those 3 into research. And if one is working more than the other under a condition, then this is the one to target. So there's still, even in the low confidence ones, there's still a great deal of potential for streamlining a therapeutic or working with that protein in some advantageous way.
And that brings us to the end of, we've only gone through the 11 to 6,
We're halfway there.
Yeah, but we're halfway there-ish. Almost a little over halfway, everyone. This is This Week in Science. We do hope that you are enjoying our 2021 countdown show. If you want to support TWIS and help us out, best thing you can do is tell a friend today. All right, let's come on back with number five. Mars. Mars was big this year. I mean, not just, it's a planet that we all like looking at in the night sky because it's that red glow to it, the hue that we can, well, not all of us, can make out in the starry night sky. But Mars, we like it. We have lots of robots on it. We like watching those robots do robot things on the planet and then finding out what those robots tell us about that distant planet that some people think we should live on someday. Who would want to do that? Anyway, Mars, we had in February the landing of the Perseverance rover, and Perseverance landed, and the helicopter Ingenuity reported in, and they immediately began to send back images with video and their first audio from Mars. So we actually had sound from the Martian soundscape. We had video. We had beautiful pictures of the Martian surface. And then they had the Mars copter make many successful flights over from April until now. Like they had a little bit of a speed bump here and there, but that Ingenuity, it's ingenious. We've got helicopters, little helicopters, remote control helicopter flying on another planet. This is amazing. Yes.
I love the picture of it. I like to think about the little helicopter buzzing around Mars.
It's absolutely fabulous. Yeah. And let's see, we had in the crater, they're now in Jericho crater where the Mars copter flew. They are now calling it Wright Brothers Field. Which makes sense for the first flight on a distant planet.
That is cute.
And then Perseverance also has Moxie.
Oh, I love Moxie. You gotta have Moxie.
Gotta have Moxie. Moxie is one of my favorite instruments on Perseverance because it's for producing oxygen, which is one of the coolest things. It's like, I'm going to take carbon dioxide and make oxygen. Ta-da!
What are you, a tree?
No, I'm Moxie, the Mars Oxygen In Situ Resource Utilization Experiment. Right? But Moxie is the proof of concept that will maybe one day create oxygen for a colony. Right? We go there, we land, maybe we can, not grow potatoes, I guess, to eat, I don't know, whatever that book and the
it's
Martian.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They did. Anyway, Moxie didn't make very much at first, but it's doing its job.
I'm watching you, Moxie.
Proof of concept.
Yeah. Let's see. What else did we have on Mars? We had Perseverance digging and digging.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Justin, you had some story about it. Did the cores it was trying to get crumbling to dust? And
they were missing. They took the core and then they looked in the thing and it wasn't there. They're looking around. Did we drop it? What happened to it? There was a couple of hiccups in the first couple shots, but they got it sorted.
Yeah, so we were finally able to get chunks of rock, and from those chunks of rock, we started getting more evidence about water on Mars.
It looks like it
was the thing.
It looks like there's at least times when there has been standing water, and maybe with the salinity to it.
Lakes, right? That there were possibly lakes and floods, multiple floods. I mean, this is some serious water. But we also got Mars quakes, and so they had the first measurements of geologic activity on Mars, little Mars quakes, which were like, what's going on there? Lots of interesting questions about Martian soil and where we will be, but we're still on Mars. as we run into number 4.
Ooh, number 4.
Number 4.
4.
Space exploration. We set the controls for the heart of the sun. The heart of the sun. Set the controls for the heart of the sun. Parker Solar Probe entered the atmosphere of the sun and took some readings. Learned about
was hot.
Yeah, it was really hot there at the surface. And next step is to dive down further into the sun where it will cool off a little bit. But yeah,
I've always thought that's one of the weirdest things, that it's like, yes, it's like a candle where the heat is at highest furthest out, but it's you when you think about the sun, you're like, no, you're going into the sun, it's going to get hotter. But the solar probe has already been through the worst part.
Yeah, I'm with you though, because if you think about a campfire, right? The embers are the hottest part. Inside. No. But it's, yep.
No, you can burn that marshmallow by holding it up above. You don't just have to stick it in the embers.
Let's see. I guess there was a telescope naming controversy. Did I miss this one?
Yeah, this is your off week, I think.
What was the big controversy?
Basically, I just made a suggestion that we stop naming things after people and name them things like Perseverance and Curiosity, and keep doing that, because it turns out that especially if you name things after white men from the past, a lot of the time they did something bad. And so James Webb was part of the purple scare. So it was the red scare was the communist thing, and then the purple scare was the kind of the homophobia in government, where they were kicking people out of government for maybe being gay, and he was a proponent of that. So
it might be great. And also let's just point out, not a scientist.
Yes, also not a scientist.
Also not a scientist. Is a director of a thing. Should not make you get he's not an astronomer. He's not.
But maybe now we can just get rid of calling it the James Webb Space Telescope and just call it the JWST, and just let the acronym be the name. Because
that's not as cool.
Since
just
like
put
2005,
call it the JOST.
It's been called the JWST.
But we cannot
since like 2005 or before. Yeah.
Regardless of what we do, NASA cannot lie to us anymore. I am done hearing about how a bunch of school kids got together and picked out the name Moxie because they didn't. No, because they definitely didn't. Because they 100% didn't come up with Perseverance. No. Yeah. Fifth graders did not come up with Perseverance. You would have had Spacey McSpaceface robot.
Exactly.
Like it would have been something fun.
You had adults choose the name from among the submissions from the children.
Here's 3. It's right, yeah. No, stop lying to us, NASA. Stop lying to the kids. The worst thing is the kids know you lied to them. They know they didn't get to come up with the name. They know. Now they know you're a liar. But I would actually let the kids come up with the name. Like, just let it, whatever the 5th graders come up with, that's what we're stuck with. And if it is Spacey McSpaceface 3, then that's what we roll with. Let's just do it.
But what's happening with Spacey McSpaceface now? I mean, the Spacey McSpaceface that was like not going to launch and was delayed. Every announcement, the entire...
A gosh darn clip broke. And then it was like, I guess 6 more months.
We're gonna delay it. I was like, oh, this is the long tail. It's just never gonna actually reach the asymptote, right? It's like getting closer and closer to 0, but never actually getting there.
Oh man.
Woo.
Okay, I'm not impressed. Can I just tell you, I'm not impressed. I'm not the least bit impressed by this. Not the least bit. Look, this is a thing that has 50 articulations, which are all high risk, in order just to open. Once it's out there, let alone all of the other aspects of the thing that have to go right, 300-400 of them, for the thing to work.
Yeah,
What
so
they've
as of
done,
12,
what they've done so far is they've launched
Yeah.
something and put
They
it into
have.
space.
It's now out past the moon.
yes, and as of
Fantastic.
Didn't
12
blow up
p.m.
yet.
Eastern, it has started unfurling its sun shields.
Okay. It's got 50 articulations. I don't know
Yeah.
how many down that is. But let's.
I don't know.
I will be impressed. Very impressed. I think this will be a next year's thing that happened. Big story is that
Yeah.
it opened because all
Well,
the building of it, everything
It's
that
going
they've
to
done.
get where it's going and start giving us pictures. We're
Not
gonna
impressed.
when we get the pictures, when we start getting the data, which is what's going to be the big story this next year, 2022.
It's a
What we
2022
get.
story.
Yes.
It's, I think it's a big 2022 story. Hopefully, it'll
Well,
be all we talk
spoiler
about.
for the prediction show next week.
Prediction
Yeah,
show
it
next
is.
week. Dun, dun,
It's going to be
dun.
I'll take that prediction next week. It's going to be a huge year, or we're going to go. Oh gosh, yeah, there's too many articulations. But I think it's
There's
an
like
extra story.
300 or something particular actions that places it could go wrong.
All the work
We've gotten
is
past
still
a lot.
ahead of this telescope operating. Just getting something into space is something that we've proven NASA can do. If it was a block of ice, it's as impressive as getting this thing out there and sending it on the way. Open.
But we know,
Give me a
like,
picture.
come on. We've launched things,
Do your
actually gotten
job.
them to Mars, and had the 7 minutes of terror a couple of times now. Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah,
we're getting
always-
good at things.
we're
Come
getting
on.
that's always
Come on,
really
NASA,
exciting.
you can
The
do this.
rockets,
It's
the
gonna be great.
Thing going up. Woo! Oh, and it didn't. It's made it. Okay, great. It's got the big work on this thing is its opening. That's the real nail biter. The rocket science is just rocket science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of just rocket science,
Uh-huh.
I don't even think this is. I wouldn't even put this as a top anything story. Billionaires proved that instead of paying taxes,
Yeah.
they could take their friends to near space, low Earth orbit.
Yeah.
And penis rockets.
Yeah. It's I think
SpaceX
it's an important
and Blue Origin.
I think
Yeah.
it's an important thing
Don't
to mention
care.
because I do
don't
think
care.
well, so I think you should though, because of exactly what you said.
Mhm.
It's important to keep an eye on this thing because space exploration should be for science and not for wasting money that should be going to people on Earth.
Right. Heart of the sun. We're checking the magnificent sun. We're going out. We've got the telescope going up. And the one we haven't even talked about, the one I totally missed, is the DART system. What does it
DART
stand
is
for?
going to be. That's
I got
our
a DART launch.
asteroid deflection
Double
system.
asteroid redirection test.
Yes.
This is a thing that's going to land on asteroid and push it out the way. That's its goal. It's found an asteroid out there. It's going to hit that asteroid, push it out the way.
I can't wait to see what happens with that. It's gonna go boop on a little moonlet around an asteroid and see if it can just change that little moonlet's orbit around its little asteroid, and we'll see.
All right, we've just gotten a correction from Patrick, who actually I believe was a contractor for NASA at one point. It's not orbit. The billionaires didn't even go into an orbit. Yes, I'm sorry. They went
low
they're not
Earth
even-
orbit.
they didn't
Yes.
orbit. They just went up and came down again. They didn't orbit the Earth. They
So the
aren't
thing that
orbiting.
I'm going to say about both of these, it's not just the big names are SpaceX and Blue Origin at the moment in the big public lexicon. There are other companies involved in what is known as the whole new space field, and there are companies that are testing equipment that has gone up to the International Space Station for testing to see how their parts will work in orbit and how different things will work. And all this stuff is kind of going on behind the scenes of us going to space. And we've gotten to the point now where it's not just NASA launching. We have SpaceX and Blue Origin launches all the time now, and we're kind of getting used to them. It's like, oh, great. SpaceX now landed a bigger rocket on its platform. Great. Okay. We're watching them go through all of the learning pains and the issues of getting up to space. And the question now is, will we become a spacefaring civilization, or will we become spacefaring for only those who can afford it? And what's going to happen there? Is it going to be because corporations, the International Space Station is going to be deorbited in about 4 to 5 years? And when that happens, we're not going to have anything up there unless the corporations build it. And so there is a multinational corporate community right now. Blue Origin is very involved in making sure that there will be a space station in the future that will be there for business, for tourism, for all sorts of purposes, that bring value to humanity. I don't know. We're sitting at the cusp of really big questions, like what's going to happen.
I don't think space should be a for-profit sector. It concerns me.
We're not going to get into, whether or not we agree with capitalism is the best economic model for moving forward for a healthy humanity. But but we can talk about how the things that we do love are stuff like the DART project. DART mission's going to let us know whether we have a future on this planet.
If we can avoid asteroids, that would be great.
Speaking of whether we have a future on this planet,
number
get to the next one? Number three.
Three.
Hey, guess what? I'm here to talk about climate change.
Oh.
Surprise.
In a surprise twist, Blair wants to talk about climate change. Unfortunately, I don't have a perfectly framed happy message with well thought out solutions for you today. I'm just going to kind of review some of the news from this year. First of all, climate change may make us infertile before we die from climate change. Also, sea level rise. NASA researchers determined that thanks to the moon's wobble and sea level rise, coastal cities will experience significantly more flooding in the 2030s. But the good news, Texas might be starting to capture carbon. We talked about that in July. I know. Also, the IPCC released a report that was on the whole terrifying. Also, we found out Russia was melting. Australia made a strange global methane pledge that didn't really mean anything. Also, people have had to start picking between clean water and food. Also, hurricanes are the new normal in a lot of the United States where they weren't before. Also, there's been lots of extreme weather, lots and lots of extreme weather. Yep. It was raining buckets today in California, and in Houston and Florida, it was over 80 degrees. It's December 29th. So things are strange out there. It's not looking great. Also, fish are leaving the equator, which means they're leaving the nutrients that they pee on coral reefs away from the equator. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Also, allergies are getting worse because of climate change. And that's the food
one
webs are collapsing.
That one's been changing for a while. It's like, more pollen's being produced. More pollen leads to more allergies. And we're like, why are allergies getting worse? I think that's one of the things. It's like, because climate change.
And because the plants are releasing it at strange times when your body's not used to it. And
suddenly you're allergic all year round.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, climate change was real bad this year. But, there were a couple things that were good, I guess. We found out that protecting the ocean protects ecosystems throughout the planet. I mean, we definitely knew that before. But that's important information to have because when you're picking your cost-benefit analysis for what to protect, the ocean's really important. And so if we can focus on that, that actually could help everyone. Yeah, I think the UK is trying to get to net zero.
No, they're not.
Kind of.
No, they're not. No, a banking commission has been set up to get their financial sector to, at some point, put in place a plan to get to net zero within the finance industry. And they're going to hire a bunch of people from the finance industry to determine what those goals should be. That's all. That's nothing.
So they've indicated that they want to start talking about maybe having a conversation about it later. I gotcha.
Yeah. And they're going to put it in the hands of the people who could care less.
Yeah. And I was about to say, hey, there's been a really big push in American politics for some climate infrastructure. Oh, wait.
Oh, nope. We seem to be
I mean,
held back on that front.
I will say, if I can try to like polish this unpleasant experience a little bit, I will say that even 4 years ago, this conversation wouldn't have happened in Congress at all. And so I recognize it's not happening fast enough. It needs to happen faster. This is a huge disappointment. And I was very, very, very sad when I found those things removed from the bill that now might not even pass. But in 2016, climate change wasn't even mentioned in the presidential debates.
Yeah.
So in a short amount of time, we have pushed this to the front of the conversation. So
This
keep
year,
fighting,
it seemed
keep
like
pushing, tell your representatives you want this taken care of.
And beyond the COP26 summit this year, which brought a bunch of people together, was disappointing. Where, again, we didn't see enough action by people on the global level either. At the same time, we have seen some news coverage coming out places where there hadn't been news coverage previously, or at least not prominent enough news coverage. We're talking like front page kind of stuff. So now, the conversation is becoming more prominent because more people are pushing for it.
Yeah. Meanwhile, climate change has been on our top 11 for, I think, a decade at least. So
at least a decade, if not longer.
So we've been shouting, but at least other people have started shouting. Yeah. So there's that.
Yeah, we can go back and look at how many times climate change has been on our list at the end of a year.
I think it's been there since the beginning of this show. So that's
probably accurate. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, it's not rosy, but there was something I do want to just have a quick moment for a statement where somebody said, so many people are worried about going back in time because they're afraid of the massive effects that a single change might happen if they were to go back in time and just mess up one little thing. But they're not worried about the effects that their little decisions, little actions will make on the future from today. So not in a negative sense, it's more in a consider how little actions on your part can have impact in the future. Think of yourself as a time traveler who's in the past, and how could you change the present to make our future better?
Yeah, that's a great
Moving
one.
on forward.
And encourage somebody to listen to TWIS so that they can be up to date on climate change news. That's something you could do.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd immediately want to become a Patreon of this show.
Yeah.
It's obviously what will save the future.
No, but really talking about climate change is one of the best things you can do for climate change. It's exactly the point, right? So it was a tongue-in-cheek answer, but it was real.
Number 2.
Two.
This one oddly doesn't have a headline for what number 2 is.
Oh, because we were arguing about what the headline was. That's why. What do you want to call
human evolution? Is it hominid evolution?
Number 2 is just blanket things Justin is interested in. Apparently.
Yeah, I called it bipedal hairless apes is what I called it.
Yeah.
The braided stream.
Some of the oldest symbols. Well, I don't know. Yeah, some of the oldest symbols, but they're actually the oldest story. Perhaps was discovered in Indonesia. They found a depiction of one pig angrily talking to 2 other pigs.
Oh, that's great! I love that.
And it's so old. I think this is like the first illustrated story in the human record now.
A storybook.
It's a story, yeah. And what's the very first story that humankind ochred to stone, or however the heck this thing was made? 3 little pigs.
There you go.
That's the first story.
Was one holding sticks?
It's an
one
old
holding
story.
Bricks and one holding straw? That's my question.
I think so.
And were they all playing the violin? That's the other important question.
There's also a mystery archaic human or 2. There's a few of them out there. Gosh, it was such a busy year. The big one, though, I think, was the Dragon Man. This is the one that was discovered like 80 years ago. Somebody dropped it down a well. The guy was afraid. He was afraid that somebody would take the skull because this was in China and they were under Japanese occupation. So he threw it down a well. He didn't never tell his kids about it. And on his dying day, he tells his grandchildren, go look at the bottom of this well. I wrapped up a skull, and I threw it down. I go to have it checked out. And then he died. So the kids eventually, what was Grandpa talking about? Something about a well. Go look at the bottom of the well. Ooh, well, let's go see what it is. And they found
Not little Timmy, but
one of the best specimens, one of the most intact skulls in the fossil record for an archaic human. Now, what's wild about this archaic human? We don't know what it is. We know it's over 140,000 years old. Could be as much as 340,000 years old. And morphologically, we don't have DNA from this thing, but morphologically, what's fascinating about it is it's closer related to modern humans than it is to Neanderthals at 146,000 years ago. And there's a chance that it's actually a Denisovan because it has some of the characteristics that we know Denisovans has. It has one tooth, and that tooth has three roots, which is also, interestingly, something we found from the Denisovan jaw in Tibet. Had 3 roots. 3 roots is most of us are running around. We got, for most of our teeth, we got 2 roots. There's some people that have additional teeth that have 3 roots. It happens about 3.5% of the population in the West. In and around China and Mongolia, it can be as high as 40%. So it's a very regional thing, right? So it has cheekbones that look very much like a modern human. It has a very large brain case like a modern human. It has a brow ridge that actually kind of looks to me a little bit more like a Neanderthal. So, but the thing is, morphologically, they're having a very difficult time placing it. And when they run their morphological simulations, it's closer to modern humans than it is to a Neanderthal, which is weird because if it is a Denisovan, Denisovans are supposed to be closer to Neanderthals. We're supposed to be closer to Neanderthals than we are to Denisovans. So the whole thing is all mixed up.
Why don't they just name it a new species?
So they have, and it's Homo longi right now. There's also about 5 or 6 other skulls that are in contention for being species in China right now, for being ancient humans of some sort. They may all actually sort of fit into this field of Denisovan. Here's the crazy thing about it. Again, we have no idea what it is at this point, but it could just be hybridization because now we know the braided stream, everything is part of everything else. You know, when you're saying we got a little bit of DNA from a place far away in Siberia of a Denisovan from that little finger bone, but now if Denisovans turn out to be much more like a modern human, if this is a Denisovan, if this is a good sample of a Denisovan, and that turns out to be very similar to modern humans, then it changes a lot of things.
Yeah.
Then it changes a whole lot of things about human evolution, human origin stories, and everything else. Because now we have one of our big hot points for origins of human evolution taking place much earlier in Asia.
Yeah.
Than the out of Africa scenario alone by itself. So I think that's where all of the human origin stories you're going to hear about coming forward may be coming out of Southeast Asia and Dragon Man region.
Why is he called Dragon Man?
Because he was found. Thought it was pulled out of the Dragon River.
Oh, okay. That's a good reason. I like that.
That makes sense.
That doesn't have weird teeth or like a muzzle.
We think he breathed fire.
Ooh, interesting traits for ancient humans.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the other one that I thought was most fascinating to me was, of course, the footprints in the Americas.
Yeah, that one was cool.
So you take the footprints in the Americas and you combine it with a couple of things. So the footprints in Americas, we find footprints in New Mexico, dating to about 23,000 years ago. Crazy thing about that is
they're not supposed to be there yet.
Well, they are and they aren't. So it depends on who what you're looking at. So you combine this. We found there was some evidence of people 20,000 years ago in the Yukon, but that was pushed off to the side. That was Jacques Mars, pushed off to the side because that's too early. Clovis, that's 12,000. That would have pushed it back to 12,500. Clovis man. Yes, but not before that. And then there's all these sites in South America showing up at 13, 14, 15, 16,000 years. And so, it's how did they get their dates and all this? There's all this discussion about it because things keep not quite fitting in a scenario that had originally been laid out. There's a cave in Mexico that earlier, I think last year, 30,000 years old. They found evidence of humans. Oh, but that can't be right because that would be during the early parts of the ice age before the big ice walls.
Right.
So that can't, right? Or at the earlier part of that. That can't be right. Now, these footprints, 23,000 years, peak of the glacial age, or the big ice bridge.
So they definitely could have walked over.
No, they could not have walked over. No. No,
they've been there.
What it means is they've been there.
Yeah.
So what I find fun about this story too is then we got the Tarim Basin mummies, whose strongest genetic link currently on the planet is Native American. Now, the whole idea is there's these Siberian people or in northeast Siberia, what is now Russia, I guess, who aren't there anymore. The people of the north aren't there anymore. They disappeared. They were replaced. And they were thought to have contributed to Native Americans and to these people. The problem is every time you keep looking at this, the hits genetically and the dates are going the wrong direction. This missing people that they think everybody is originated from is less than 23,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. The problem is the map, all of the arrows are pointing in the wrong direction. Now you have, if Denisovan or an offset, if you have these early modern humans, 156 to 300,000 years ago in China already, why not in the Americas already? And so then when you're talking about the native, the crossing into the Bering, there may have been people there already. You're maybe talking about a much older populating of America and some contribution back. One of the fascinating ones was another study where they found a link between Australian indigenous people and a specific tribe of people living in the Amazon Brazilian region. Oh, what is it? Well, there was this link. They kept finding, they're like, what is this genetic link? And as they kind of figured it out, it's like, well, it's not as specific, but it's less populated against amongst people along the coastal region than these interior Amazonian folks. How could that be? It could be ancestral linkage from much further back, not a traveling across the ocean thing. That would have had too big of a signal. So this has to have been a combined ancestor who could, I'm just speculating, could already have been in the Americas. And the reason I'm speculating is because the data doesn't now show a clear arrow of direction in our timeline. And we've biased it on this information. Well, it could have been 7,000, only 9,000 years ago. And then it keeps getting pushed back and pushed back. Anyway, once I think the bias is removed from the straight out of Africa story and the straight land bridge story, we may get a much clearer picture of human origin and distribution around the planet.
I love also, there was a study that was from earlier in last year, I thought, that was based only on genetic evidence, where they looked at modern humans and they said, oh, look, the genomes all line up and we've got a mystery Denisovan. Right? Didn't they like put things together and they're like, oh, so now we know about just because of DNA and the history that lies within modern human DNA, they're able to get suggestions of interbreeding and these braided streams. And so there's a certain point at which it's like they don't even need to have the old fossils. It's just have modern humans kind of fossil humans that we can get some DNA out of, and then we can kind of make up the rest. So
Sort
the
of
whole
good.
story's changing as well.
You can get a
Physical
lot of
evidence
that.
to not.
Yeah, you can get a lot of that. But the big thing you want to get, though, is you want to get more samples of that
Yes.
DNA from different
Yeah.
places and different
Mhm.
ages. And one of the great
For
examples
sure.
is my wife is Danish and very Danish. And the family is deep-rooted Danish. There's nobody who hasn't been Danish, I don't think. Maybe a Norwegian.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yes.
But she did one of those genetic tests and got a big hit for British. Now, if you know your history, maybe some of those British genes are actually donated from Viking origin.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
From way back in. Right. So when you're looking at this is what we're calling Denisovan DNA right now might be a hybrid of things as it is. The entire definition of Denisovan Neanderthal in Asia might be incoherent. Nothing's going to fit neatly into boxes. And I think that's what we're going to have to also be ready for, is that none of this, but already we have an out of Africa modern looking human well before we were the sort of Levant trek into the Caucasus and into Europe. Long before that took place.
Yeah.
Very exciting. Very exciting.
So exciting. Are we ready for the top? Are we ready? Is it time?
5, 4, 3, 2.
One.
Cue the fireworks. Number 1 for 2021 is vaccines. And not just the COVID vaccines, which have been distributed across continents around the globe to billions of people at this point in time. Unfortunately, there are still billions who remain unvaccinated for a variety of reasons. But vaccines aren't just the thing that has allowed us to combat this particular pandemic. Vaccines are also going to allow us to defeat other viruses that we are currently combating. So this year, we saw a malaria vaccine go from clinical trials to full acceptance, green light from the World Health Organization in Africa. 400,000 people die every year from malaria. That number,
and that's the recent years. That's the recent years.
Yeah.
If you go back a decade, I think even it's twice that.
And the anti-malarials aren't working as well as they used to. Now it's combating mosquitoes. It's using bug nets. It's using, pesticides to try and kill the insects. We haven't really had a success for a long time in fighting this actually parasite, right? It's the malaria parasite that infects us. And this is a hope for the future. They had evidence from phase 2 trial early in the year that the vaccine was 74 to 77% effective after 1 year in preventing malaria infection in children. And they had more and boosters were required to rejuvenate that response. And then another vaccine, the one that was green lighted, was over 87% effective preventing infection in patients at the highest level of doses. China has also eliminated malaria. They've had 3 years with 0 indigenous cases. So there's good news on some fronts. Vaccines are hopefully going to help us out. Vaccines they come in multiple flavors as well. We have vaccines made of adenoviruses. We have vaccines that use lipids to help mRNA get into our system. This year, of course, we're so thankful for those mRNA vaccines. The Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines are doing great here in the United States. And we see the potential for the future of mRNA vaccines. Unfortunately, it didn't have some great results with the mRNA HIV vaccine from Moderna. That one didn't work out as well as they hoped. But every virus is different, and we have to keep trying. The fact is, mRNA allows for a much easier formulation. Once you have a genetic sequence, you can create the RNA, the mRNA that's required. And early this year, there was published in Science, BioNTech successfully used mRNA to deliver autoantigens into lymphoid dendritic cells, those are immune cells in mice, to result in a population of T cells that suppressed autoreactivity. This treatment delayed onset and reduced severity of a mouse model of multiple sclerosis.
Amazing.
mRNA could lead to a treatment for multiple sclerosis, which has previously devastated people's lives. For decades, for years, we've had these autoimmune problems, not just multiple sclerosis. Maybe it could affect rheumatoid arthritis. Maybe mRNA is going to give us the next COVID/flu vaccination, so we don't have to get multiple shots. Maybe we'll get single. Maybe we will have an mRNA broad spectrum flu vaccine or broad spectrum coronavirus vaccine so that we will get rid of that common cold.
Oh, I would love it.
We have potential. Vaccines and our ability to fight those invading antigens. It's growing, and there's great potential in vaccines in the future.
Get vaccinated, everybody, for all
Get
the things.
vaccinated! Yeah! Lots of misinformation about vaccines, that's for sure. I'm not a big fan.
No, it was a big year for science miscommunication, too, so...
Was it miscommunication?
Yeah, it's intentional miscommunication.
I think that's called propaganda.
Sure, yeah.
But
misinformation is another one, right?
Yeah. But before we jump into that, that's something that we can get into very briefly now that we are heading into the very end of the show. But we do have, a few more minutes here to talk about some little stories that titillated and interested and sparked curiosity and wonder in those of us, even if it was wonder that, what the heck? Yeah, that kind of wonder. This is This Week in Science. We hope that you've been enjoying our 2021 science countdown of the top 11 science stories for the year. All right, Blair, did you have some best of shows?
Yes, I have what was clearly the choice for number 1 in the top 11, but Kiki, I have to disagree with you here. You pushed it out of the way for the vaccines. We got our very first perfectly preserved dinosaur sphincter this year. Oh, what a year. This is at the beginning of the year. This is in January. The first dinosaur anus ever discovered sheds lights on, quote unquote, where the sun don't shine for dinosaurs. And so they, and of course, dinosaurs don't have a normal anus. They have a cloaca. They have an all-in-one hole. It's where the reproductive organs are and where they have urine and feces come out, and it's all in one place. It's where the eggs come out. And so, yeah, we got to get up close and personal with dinosaur cloacas this year, and I'm thankful. That's all I have to say. So that's my number 1 story. No,
I mean, was it the Deinanus?
Yes, the Deinanus. The
Deinanus?
Pretty much. Yeah. So then in other just kind of fun headlines that happened this year, we found out that humans are basically not even humans anymore because they burn so much energy that they are classified metabolically. They could be classified as a different species.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's the whole story. I don't really need to go further into it. They just process so much energy that they're basically a different species. So that's why when you see a kid running down and then crashes and needs a nap, because they're a different species, man. Just let it happen. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention was the full moon crazies. So we discovered this year, also in January actually, that on nights before, leading up to, and on a full moon, people generally go to bed later and sleep less. Their circadian rhythms are somehow impacted by the moon, despite the fact that we live indoors these days. And that can impact their sleep patterns, that can impact their kind of overall emotional state. And I like to think that this maybe explains, this is a scientific reasoning behind the full moon crazies, because as someone who's married to someone in the emergency medical field, this is a real thing, that when it's a full moon, people are crazy. So it's good to know there's actually a scientific reason that isn't kind of like extra woo. It really is that your body doesn't let you sleep as much, and so it drives you a little bit insane.
People are just up a little bit more. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Blair. Thank you for those reminders of the fun.
I loved them.
Yeah. I wanted to add some weird stories from the last year. There was a story that you brought up, Blair, that I thought was just fabulous. For talk about solutions for climate change. Toilet training cows.
Yes,
That was
I
pretty
loved
great.
this story.
Where they trained the cows to walk down and go to the bathroom on
Go
a
pee
little
on this
fake
grate that would
Yeah.
channel the nitrogen-rich urine away from the ground.
Yeah, you go to the bathroom here. We're going to take that, and we're going to do this different. And then they could manage the nitrogen, the carbon, the things going from, instead of going into the soil, could be taken care of. Oh my goodness. Blair, seriously, I think it was a lot of your stories that what I considered the weird for the year.
Yeah, that tracks. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. Worm milk.
Oh yes, the worm milk. Yes.
Worm milk.
I loved
and
that story.
Just the worm mothers creating this milk and milking themselves to death.
Yeah, they basically disintegrate their innards into concentrated, delicious milk for their babies.
It's not delicious. It's called worm milk. It's worm milk.
I hear worms like it. Have you tried it? It's a lot sweeter than you'd expect.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Yep. Googly-eyed bird deterrents.
Yes.
There were buoys. The buoys that they've used googly eyes on buoys to keep seabirds from going to the bathroom on these, from keeping them away from fish nets, actually.
Right, because they get stuck.
The seabirds come down because they smell everything that's coming from the fish and the phytoplankton in the area that these nets are catching, and then the buoys have these googly-eyed deterrents.
Yes.
And the seabirds don't like them.
I forgot about this story. I love it.
It's a great story. I mean, if something so simple can deter animals from a fate of death, then googly eyes for science. This is the best.
Absolutely. Call Johnny and Heather. Are you guys watching?
Googly eyes.
Googly eyes.
It's science. Oh my goodness. What was there was a duck that learned how to talk.
That was yours. And I did not like it.
I didn't like it. Right, it was a weird quack of it was you bloody fool. You bloody fool.
Oh
like
yeah, I hated that so
breathing
much.
outwards and say anyway. You bloody fool. That was the talking duck. And we had mice made to bond with each other at the push of a button, because they'd push a button and it would release oxytocin or something, or dopamine, and then it into the brain, and it was a microchip that was implanted into their brains. But we can make you be friends with other mice.
I don't remember this. Oh wow.
Yeah, an implanted wireless batteryless brain implant harnessing optogenetics to manipulate social interactions in mice. Yeah. fun stuff what we're doing with mice these
Mm.
days, eh? Yeah.
Thanks,
But anyway, lots of fun there. There was also the science that wasn't, the
Mike.
things that or what we could also call wishful thinking, or also further evidence that people really don't understand science. And that would be UFOs, hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin, just about any other woo treatment for whatever disease. I don't know. There was so much of that doesn't really work. The evidence is not there, and people just wanting to.
So the best part is that they will, with the same breath, say, there isn't enough evidence. I'm going to do my own research. So I don't feel this vaccine, it's too new. And then in the same breath, they're going to take a horse dewormer for something that it's not for. With no data.
With no data. All I can say is if
No,
you're doing your own
I-
research, it better be in a lab and not just on Dr. Google. Okay?
So, first of all, by doing their own research, they've listened to a talk show or a news report.
And I'm going to say,
that
if
is
anybody
producing
comes to me and says,
propaganda,
I listen to
not
TWIS,
information.
I do my own research, I listen to TWIS, I'm going to go, no.
Yeah, did you click on the links and read the links? Because that's doing the
Go
research.
Go deeper.
Click on our show notes.
Oh no, I think actually if somebody listens to this show, they're
Oh, it's totally fine.
Yeah. So no, wait, okay. Because
I want people to be skeptical of the things
thing.
we say also.
No,
We
I don't
are a
think they need
point
to be.
for
This is a
the
place where you can
sparking of
relax that part of your
curiosity.
brain. This is a place where you can literally relax that part of your brain for the duration of the show. There's active, when we're talking about people who've done their own research, like people didn't spontaneously decide, thousands of people did research and all of their independent studies came up with ivermectin is the best way to go. No, nobody did that. That's not what happened. People were told to do this.
Yes.
People were misled and misinformed intentionally.
This might, 2021 could
Intentionally.
also have been like the year that science started to realize, really realize a lot of its problems, with publishing and with transparency and with science communication and with, how it's perceived by the public and trust and
Well, so I want to say too about this topic that it's been tough because there's been further muddying of the waters of who a trusted source is, because I feel also like there's a lot of mixed messages about what messages from the government are scientifically accurate and which ones are not. And so I think that is another issue. I don't have a perfect answer, but there's lots of people out there that I know that are very scientifically minded people who have a deep mistrust of the CDC after how the last 2 years have gone. And I can understand it, right? And so I think that needs to be resolved in some way, because simultaneously, there are people who are science-minded and want to do the right thing who are not going to do their own research. Instead, they are stuck with either following what the government tells them or not because of a mistrust in that government. So I think I don't have an answer to this question, but I think that this experience in the last year in particular with all the vaccines, 2021, has really exposed a lot of the complications and problems that we have in science and government and our communications.
Yep.
Before the next pandemic.
So that we can get through the next pandemic.
We're still in one.
I know, but we have to be planning now for the next one. I know. It's all the time. Ooh,
if we wait till this is over
to
learn and change, we'll never change because it's
But oh my
ending.
goodness. But oh my goodness. The learning and the changing, just going back to, your disclaimer at the beginning of the show, Justin. Hopefully we can learn and change and not repeat our mistakes again. And hopefully we will go into 2022 better prepared for ending the pandemic, or at least living with it more easily and facing the next challenge, because there will be another one.
Yes.
We need to face that reality.
We also need to face the reality that we're in worse shape going into this year than we were last year going into this year. If I said that right. We're in worse.
Yep, we
we're in
are.
a worse place, trajectory wise. 2020. What is it? 2? Is that what's happening? 2022 is going to be a lot worse than 2021, which is a lot worse than 2020. So just be ready for that.
I can't wait for the end of year rundown for 2022. Jeez. Justin, you're depressing everybody at the end of the show. Come on.
Yeah,
I mean,
you did it.
I was trying to end the show on a positive note, and here you go.
Well, but you were like also saying we shouldn't lie to people, and now I'm trying not to.
Listen, whatever 2022 brings, we'll be here. We'll be here to report science.
Hopefully.
We
I
will
hope to see you all next year.
We will talk through it with all of you.
I really hope to.
We will shake our fists at the ceiling when things get rough. We will jump up and down when things are good. We'll be here.
Yeah, that's a New Year's resolution that I hope we can. I might be starting the fireworks a little bit early, but it's time for us to end this show. We have come to the end.
This was the after show. Oh yeah, we better hurry up and get out of here.
We've come to the end of another show. We've come to the end of another year. We've come to the end of another countdown. Thank you, all of you, for being with us this year, for finding us, for joining us on this scientific journey of curiosity and appreciation. And we hope that you'll be with us again next year. Thank you so much for listening, for watching, and hope you enjoyed this show. Time for some shout outs. Shout outs to Fada for your help with social media and show notes. Always so wonderful. Gord, thank you for manning the chat, kind of keeping an open eye there to keep things above board. Identity 4, thank you for recording the show week after week after week. So appreciate that. Rachel, thank you for your assistance, for your editing. I have more work for you next year, that's for sure. I would also like to thank our Patreon sponsors for their generous support of TWIS. Thank you to Richard Badge, Kent Northcote, Pierre Velazar, Ralphie Figueroa, John Ratnaswamy, Carl Kornfeld, Karen Tazi, Woody MS, Andre Bissett, Chris Wozniak, Dave Bunny, Begard, Chefstad, Hal Schneider, Donathan Stiles, a.k.a. Don Stylo, John Lee, Ali Coffin, Maddie Perrin, Gaurav Sharma, Don Mundus, Stephen Alberon, Daryl Myshak, Stu Pollock, Andrew Swanson, Fredos104, Sky Luke, Paul Ronovich, Kevin Reardon, Noodles, Jack Kieran, Brian Carrington, Matt Bass, Sean and Nina Lamb, John McKee, Greg Riley, Mark Hessenflow, Gene Tellier, Steve Leisman, a.k.a. Zima, Ken Hayes, Howard Tan, Christopher Rappin, Dana Pearson, Richard, Brendan Minish, Johnny Gridley, Kevin Railsback, Rami Day, Flying Out, Christopher Dreyer, Artyom, Greg Briggs, John Atwood, Kay Arizona, support Aaron Lieberman for governor, Rudy Garcia, Dave Wilkinson, Rodney Lewis, Paul Mallory Stutter, Philip Shane, Kurt Larson, Craig Landon, Mountain Sloth, Jim Drapeau, Sarah Chavis, Sue Doster, Jason Olds, Dave Neighbor, Eric Knapp, E.O., Kevin Parachin, Aaron Luthen, Steve DeBell, Bob Calder, Marjorie, Paul Disney, David Simmerly, Patrick Pecoraro, Tony Steele, Ulysses Adkins, and Jason Roberts. Thank you for all of your support of TWIS. And if you would like to support TWIS on Patreon, head over to twis.org and click on that Patreon link. We also... What's going on next week? We're going to be back here next week prognosticating for 2022.
Also, we're going to make predictions.
Yes, it's our annual prediction show next week. This week is the look back at the year before. Next week is the look ahead at the year to come and into our scientific crystal balls. What will we see?
And that's always a pretty fun show.
Yeah, don't miss
Some of our predictions are pretty amazing.
Spot on, you meant.
I don't know about the accuracy, but they're pretty good.
So when are we going to do that, Justin?
8 p.m. Pacific time Wednesday or 5 a.m. Central European time Thursday next week. We will be broadcasting live from our YouTube and our Facebook channels, as well as from twis.org/live.
Hey, do you want to listen to us as a podcast? You can listen to all this amazing countdown we did today while you wash some dishes, fold some laundry, draw some pictures, drive in your car, be great. Just search for This Week in Science wherever podcasts are found. If you enjoyed the show, you can get your friends to subscribe as well.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes and links to the stories will be available on our website, www.twis.org. And if you're in the mood for such a thing, you can sign up for a newsletter. It will be mailed to you.
Yeah. Also, while you're there, since it's about to be January 1st, you should order a calendar if you haven't already. Anyway, yeah. You can also contact us directly. Email Kirsten at kirsten@thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twistminion@gmail.com, or me, Blair, at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, in the subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into a jar of horse dewormer, I guess. I don't know.
You can also hit us up on the Twitter, which is a thing. We have Twitter addresses, which are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jackson Fly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you would like us to cover or address, a suggestion for an interview, haiku that comes due in the night, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week with those predictions, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
Join us.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head. Next year.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. 'Cause this week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth, and I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. 'Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in 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 Science.